Hello and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Factory. I'm thrilled to have on the factory floor today Mr. Steve Gibson, S.A. Gibson, prolific indie science fiction writer and editor in chief of the Science Fiction Anthology, of which the 2026 edition will be published in February of this year. Welcome aboard, Steve.
Thanks so much. I'm so happy to be here, talk about the anthology, talk about science fiction writing. It's a great topic to be talking about right now.
Yeah, especially with all the changes in culture and society and how science fiction has always been a nice mirroring of everything we're experiencing in our culture. Let's start with you. S.A. Gibson is your nom de plume in science fiction. You've got as many as 20 books published. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey as a independent science fiction author?
Yeah, I started writing science fiction stories, books about a little over 10 years ago because I read voraciously my whole life science fiction. I just read it from childhood all through my life and read hundreds and hundreds of books. And I finally got to the point where I felt like I wasn't finding the exact science fiction stories that I wanted to read. So I felt like I had to write them myself.
I'm nodding because I felt exactly like you, which precipitated me writing the science fiction book that I wanted to read.
Yeah, that's what happens to us.
Yes.
And I've been very fortunate, and my almost all my stories are set in kind of a fictional Earth where technology is lost. And there's no cell phones, no computers, no cars, no airplanes. It's mostly like early 1800s, 1805, that type, where you have steam, you have balloons, you have horses, wagons, sailing ships, that sort of thing, but not the advanced technology that we have today. And that most of my stories are set in that world, and they've been all over the place. I've set some in California, where I live. I set some in Southwest, like Arizona, New Mexico. I've set some in India, Egypt, different parts of the world, with in the same world, and kind of in an interconnecting, where some of the characters are switched shared between the different stories. And I'm very proud to say that some have been translated into Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and French. I'm always like to impress people by saying that some have been translated into other countries.
You're not only nationwide, you're international.
So, I joined a group on Facebook called Science Fiction Novelists many, many years ago. And we share tips on writing tips and give each other advice and announce our newest books. We just announced the actual books we've actually published on that, and talk about, hey, do you write this way? Do you do first person? Do you do past tense, present tense? What are the different ways that we different authors work, and what can we learn from each other? So we did that for many years, and then somebody in the group had the idea of, why don't we, group of authors, produce a single anthology and publish it for people to purchase? And we would take stories from multiple authors, short stories, between like 500 words to 9,000 words, and combine them together in one anthology and publish it. So I, as one of the moderators of the group, joined the other moderators, and we became the editors for the very first one of these in 2021 was the very first one we published. So we started in 2020 during COVID.
Yes.
So everybody's sitting at home, able to write. And we collected short stories from many different members, from about 20 different members of the Facebook group, submitted short stories. We editors looked through them, selected the ones we thought would be the best, brought kind of the best qualities, best writing, best stories. And they were all different types of science that fit within the science fiction genre. So some were about, telepathy, some were about AI. A lot over the last few years have been about AI. I wonder why.
Not surprising, since Chat GPT officially joined us. What was the end of November 2022? So obviously, it's brought science fiction into everyone's life for real.
That's right. So yeah, that was our very first one. 2021. We published in the first part of the year, like February of 2025, and about 20 stories from about 12 authors. We made rule where each author could submit up to 2 stories. So some of the authors had more than one story. I have been submitting a story every year. Most years I've co-written a story with another author, just to sort of share the wealth of like writing a good short story with other people. So that first year, we didn't, of course, know what was going to happen, but we were amazed at how high our science fiction anthology rose up in the rank of all the science fiction anthologies for that year. We found ourselves like at number 5, number 10, fluctuating all year, very high in the ratings, which meant a lot of sales. It meant a lot of eyes. Reviews like those first couple of years have review numbers like 500, things like that, which is, if you've published a book on the on the stores,
that tough
people don't review books.
They do not. I think it's something like a 2%, 2 to 5% ratio of folks.
It's amazing.
Buy to review, and Amazon uses that as central to its algorithm for prioritization and ranking, cutting through the clutter. You need those authoritative reviews from actual buyers to make your book visible. So it's a cat chasing its tail. If you have no reviews, you don't get seen. If you don't get seen, you don't get reviews. If you get seen, you get reviews. And if you get reviews, you get better seen.
It's so agonizing watching sales. You can actually get some sales, but reviews don't show up. So it's like, we authors always are trying to encourage people, write a review. It's the most important thing you can do. Write a review.
And readers don't realize that. They're just like, well, spend the extra few minutes. But it does make a categorical, quantitative difference especially for indie authors to cut through that clutter.
So you can imagine how many sales we had to actually get hundreds of reviews.
Yeah,
it meant we were really being successful in our sales. And I don't understand why. I don't understand marketing. I believe one issue is, since we have tens of authors for each anthology, they tell their friends and family. And I think that helps feed the algorithm. The fact that friends and family,
the word of mouth. I call it friends and family fan club. So, it happens to all indie authors. That's the lowest of low-hanging fruit. You tell everybody, and they just want to support you. They might not even be a science fiction fan. They might not even be a reader. Chances are they won't even read it. But they're, in a sense, doing you a steady by seeing your name in a book published, and they want to support you. And then that creates a groundswell of interest, which alerts the algorithm that, hey, we are here, like the Who people, and Horton Hears the Who, we're here. And then that builds up, and it establishes a positive feedback mechanism from there to, get some excitement for the book. And it's significant. As we know, archetypal and very classic science fiction authors, for example, Isaac Asimov, he wrote the short story Nightfall, which basically launched his entire career as a writer. So the short story format, often serialized, often in an anthology. In his case, it was part of a old school pulp science fiction magazine, can do things for an indie author. It can get you noticed, it gets you out there. And the short story format is ideal for that, especially nowadays. People don't have much time to read or to process. And if they can go through a read, to your point, anywhere from 1,000 to maybe 8,000-9,000 words max, it's digestible in today's attention-starved, hyper-digital ecosystem, right?
Yeah. And so that first year was so successful, we decided to do it again. So we have done it every year, publishing around the same time, near the beginning of the year, publishing in January, February, or March, depending on how the editing goes and everything comes together. We started paying, we paid a small amount, kind of a very token amount the first year to each individual author for each story. And we've increased it slowly over the year. It's a one-time payment with no further rights. And we negotiate a open publishing model where the author retains full rights to their story, so they can reuse it somewhere else. If a movie studio wanted to buy it, they could buy it from
It's
the
a
author.
non-exclusive kind of contract with a flat fee, and that dispenses with some of the potential legal problems too of copyright and residuals and all that, which is, it's a nice clean arrangement with the authors. And with that non-exclusivity clause, it's like, it's your content, go for it. And we're actually helping to promote you as an indie author. We're sharing your content with the world through this vehicle of the anthology. And then you get something of a reach. And then you can take that story and that content and do with it what you will. So it's a good arrangement. It's equitable. I ran into you at LA Comic-Con. I had a booth set up with my fellow science fiction author Ingrid Moon, and we both got excited about your anthology, and we checked it out, and I submitted a couple stories. I'm happy you chose one of mine. So, in the spirit of transparency, I too am vested in the success of your anthology, especially this year, and look forward to not only seeing my own story in there, but the stories of how many made it this year? Was it?
We actually have 19 authors, including myself. And one interesting point about our this anthology is we have authors from all over the world. We have a few authors from the U.S. We have authors from Canada, from England, from South Africa, from
great.
Rome, from Taiwan, and that's I think a somewhat unique aspect of this particular anthology. They're all in English. They're all English speakers and English writers, but they are spread around the world.
Yeah, I love that international approach. You have your books translated in various languages, and then you have the international science fiction writers writing in English, and the anthology that you edit. So it's got a nice complementary feel to it. What's the flavor of? Can you give us a little bit of a hint as to the flavor of
it's
some
interesting
of these stories?
Because we have all these diverse authors from all over the place, and the stories are very similar. They're very diverse. I mean, my story, the one story I have in, is set in this alternate world where there's not modern technology. So it's very low tech for a science fiction story. Other stories really focus on technology, space, or other type of science fiction themes. And some, again, relate to artificial intelligence, what is a human being, that sort of thing, when machines start thinking for themselves. And so we really run the gambit of a lot of different themes of science fiction, and some even you might have to call speculative fiction. They may not be considered hard science fiction. We've tried to at least have a large percentage of it kind of more mainstream science fiction, but we do allow stories in that are more speculative and not hard science fiction.
Yeah, my own story is a multiverse tale, but it's got a Hunter S. Thompson kind of feel to it. And I don't know if we would call it speculative. There is some hard science fiction in it, but it's kind of a romp in the world of a con man and a crypto cheat and all this kind of stuff. So you embracing that diversity sounds like a fun time for readers
Yeah.
who like
I think it, yeah,
different kinds of reading, right? That's
yeah, I think it's an appealing aspect that we're not just one narrow definition of science fiction. We have these different approaches, so that if someone doesn't like one story, they might like the very next story.
sure.
It's a chance for people to touch different waters in the science fiction stream.
Yeah, I think there's as many different types of science fiction writers as there are writers. And some folks tend to be a little bit more derivative of others. They adopt recognizable styles. You see a little bit of Heinlein. You see a little bit of Arthur C. Clarke. You might see a little bit of more contemporary authors, and then others have their own distinct voice and do their own thing, just like all genres. And personally, I found your editorial and selection process very, very professional. So for budding authors or established authors who might want to submit for next year, my personal experience with you and the team was very pleasant. I thought that the editor comments were on point. I actually approved all of them. You know, I'm the type of author too, or come on, you know, this is perfect as is, right? And I'm sure you get a lot of pushback. Don't touch that. Don't cut. And I just thought they were very fair. And again, and being conscious of word count, being aware that my story would exist within this universe of other stories, I was appreciative of the intelligent editorial feedback. And I think that's reflective of a very professional kind of approach that you and your team take to the anthology.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm an author also that believes that my vision is the true vision and should be respected. So, you know, I struggled with editors when I first started, because it's like, why are you trying to change my vision? I'm surely my way to approach the story is the right way.
Yes.
But I've learned to work constructively with editors, and we try to tell new authors who are coming to our anthology, who are submitting to our anthology, that we have standards and a process, and that we are trying to hold a very high quality of our final product. And that means that an author will need to work with our editors in terms of what their final product is going to look like. So we try to make that up front and have people understand that.
My experience with your editor, the one I got, was pleasant and reasonable. And again, I accepted all of the feedback. I saw, you know, certain cherished parts of my short story, left for some later time, but the brunt of it's there, and I felt that the comments were on point. And again, I was sensitive to word count and the reality that my story is nestled among so many others. And and I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of it. I am curious though about your short story that you wrote, which again exemplifies the style that you've commanded across most of your books. You mentioned that it's an atavistic kind of situation, that the technology is behind steam power and the like. How is it science fiction if it's a throwback? What makes it
Yeah.
science fiction?
Yeah, I have. When people ask me, what do you write? I say science fiction, but then I feel like, oh, I have to give caveats. I have to explain it or something. But and sometimes I do say, well, it could be considered speculative fiction. It's an alternate world. So the world is different than it is. But science, as I heard from a professor one time in school, science is not just these new tech things we have, like laser beams and GPS. That's not all that science. Having a printing press, a mechanical printing press, was a big advancement for human beings. Making compass, figuring out latitude and longitude, those were big technological leaps. The invention of writing, a pen and writing, is a technological advancement. So we can have technology without having the newest versions we have, without having an artificial intelligence machine. We could still have technology. So I give myself the grace of saying, well, it's science fiction if I'm using printing presses and I'm using compasses and sextants and mechanical pencils and that sort of thing. Those are all a form of technology. So I'm calling it science fiction.
But usually science fiction enters the realm of the counterfactual conditional, the what if. In my book, what if Max Tegmark's level 4 multiverse is true? That the backbone of reality itself is this mathematical, logical foundation. And what if some entity got control of the elemental equations that can actually build universes? So I went big. I was like, the stakes couldn't be higher. The bad guy here can delete reality itself. And then I went for it. So it's science fiction. It's hard science fiction. Is I did a lot of research so that would sound convincing in the engineering and in the world building and in all that. So it's speculative, hard science fiction. With your world, it's printing presses and steam engines. What's the trope, if you will? What is the driver of building tension within a world where characters have problems to solve? What's your angle of attack?
In some of my stories, there is a conflict with higher levels of technology. For example, in one of my first short stories, it's set in India and after civilization has collapsed. And one person has access to a howitzer, a 155 millimeter howitzer. And the librarians in my world, librarians are very powerful because they have access to the information. There's no computer backup information. Everything is in paper books. So librarians are the ones that keep order in much of the world. And so librarians are in conflict with this person who has a advanced cannon system.
It's a weapon of micro destruction, which is actually mass destruction in a society devoid of real technology.
Another story I have also set in India is someone is making a dirty bomb with uranium. And so the people need to stop this weapon from being used. So that's not the normal level of technology in society, but one person has access to this more advanced technology of how to make a dirty bomb, which is, of course, the very first ideas of how you use radiation to cause mass destruction.
I get it. So it's not just an alternate timeline or another universe where it's a throwback, but you're dealing with a post-apocalyptic society that once had this technology, that lost it, and is now clamoring to survive with these instances of either throwback or little teasers of what would be considered advanced technology for them, which is kind of like the remains of the civilization that has been lost. Is that correct?
Yeah. So when they run into a conflict with these more advanced systems, they can find books that in their old archives that talk about this advanced technology that they are having a conflict with. So there's information about, how are radiation bombs made. We have a book that shows that.
Yeah, I get it. That's pretty cool. So you're launching off the post-apocalyptic trope, but you're infusing it with these little teaser nuggets of technology that kind of creeps on through, and then they need to deal with it.
Right.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. How did you land on this motif, especially since it's prevalent across so many of your different stories?
My wife and I were talking about India and talking about how there are steam trains running in India right now. And we thought, if civilization collapsed, if we lost if we lost gas power, we lost electricity, we lost all these modern energy sources, that steam train could keep running. Just need wood and water, and that steam train can keep running. And so that was kind of the seed of the idea of my first story. And my first story was set in India. And then afterwards, I looked around the world and where are there native cultures? Where are there cultures that have held on to old technology? So I have some of my stories are set on Indian reservations, native reservations in the United States, feeling like, well, unfortunately, some of them are not as advanced and have to use kind of more, they do hunting and fishing and farming because that's what they have to do. And if civilization collapsed, their life might not change at all. One of my stories is set in the Gullah lands of the Carolinas. There's a group of ex-slaves in the Carolinas, in the islands, the sea islands right off of the Carolinas, where they've kept an old language from Africa, and they hunt and fish and make their own clothes and baskets. And so one of my stories talks about, hey, they would actually thrive in a situation where all other technology is lost.
Yeah, that's a really fun premise. For some reason, it reminds me of the COVID impact on the animal kingdom. And by this, I mean, you've got a lot of species who have literally evolved sharper or more muted beaks as humans have receded from their ecosystems and then returned. And this, in a sense, is humanity's evolution, if you will, at least culturally and in terms of values, maybe even in terms of some of the tech, of losing all of it, maybe rediscovering some of it and dealing with the dynamic tension of all that.
Yeah, I try to think a lot about how would society evolve if we were stuck back with these more primitive forms of transportation. We didn't travel as much. We were kind of in smaller groups in a small village. How would that change how we interact and how we govern ourselves and how we interact with threats that come to us? When you mentioned the animals, I was thinking of Chernobyl. There's stories about animals exploding in numbers around Chernobyl because people are gone.
Yeah, and by exploding, you mean population. Yeah, and then people are gone, and then the nature just has a way of taking over. And in all the apocalyptic science fiction stories, you've got nature just reclaiming the earth with humanity receding for one reason or another. Talk about receding. How do you feel about the state of science fiction in 2025 to 26, even compared to only a few years ago? We've got a couple things that have really, really changed, which is digital media. You've got the evolution of the streaming and the digital and the studio model where content is just being churned out, some of which is science fiction. And then you've got a shift from folks who are doing a lot of reading to doing a lot less reading and relying on other modalities such as graphic novels and mostly just video and film. You've got the evolution of the short as opposed to the big spectacle movie, which is expensive to create and market and distribute. How do you feel as a science fiction writer now compared to only a few years ago within this context of the genre itself trying to rediscover itself?
Yeah, I think there's kind of an inevitable change coming. I think that there's going to be more and more short content and a lot of video, audio.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that is the future. I think there are less people reading now than there were in the past. And I think that trend will continue. Um, it's I'm kind of old, so I remember the old days of the golden age of science
I'm the Gen
fiction.
Xer here, the boomer cuspy Gen Xer.
So yeah, I've seen the change happen, and I think it's going to continue. So I think that we're going to have to start marketing on TikTok. We're going to have to start doing TikTok videos to express our the stories we want to tell in our fictional stories that we want to tell. We're going to have to adapt to new mediums, new media to do it. We're going to have to do it on TikTok, on YouTube, on Instagram. And I think it's the wave of the future. I think obviously books will continue, but I don't think the market for books is going to increase. The markets for books, I think, is stable and probably slowly going down. But the market for videos and entertainment and entertainment on all the sensory spectrums is going to keep continuing and growing year by year.
Absolutely. I think supply overall across all channels and modalities is exponentially increasing. I think in terms of self-published books, you had something crazy like 100,000 plus last year. Science fiction is a chunk of that. So there's just a tsunami of content. But I also agree with you that in terms of engagement and consumption, it's disproportional, right? So you've got less readers with tons more content available. But on the video side, especially shorter form, social media driven video, digital video, it's blossoming. So everything is super crowded. It's hard to get noticed, it's hard to get attention. But if you do want to get noticed and you do want to connect, a great way to lay that bridgehead is to expand into the visual medium, into film and video, shorter reels, quick attention getting stuff that appear dynamically in social media feeds, as opposed to someone browsing in a bookstore or even browsing online and consuming 100,000 words, as opposed to 3 minutes max of digital video. And I've been processing this and working through it. My primary driver has been, I'm a writer, and that's where my real passion is. And I wrote the science fiction book of my dreams, and then I'm kind of like, well, crickets. There's so many books, it's hard to connect. And then I realized that podcasting, both appearing as a guest and creating my own shows, going on TikTok with little reels, and spreading myself out as much as I can in a multimedia, multimodal kind of way, is a way of adapting to this changing world we're in, where, to your exact point, books are always going to be there, but they're almost like the blueprint of the ideation around storytelling. And we're going to have to adapt and figure out how to repurpose ourselves. And now we've got AI as both a crutch, a tool, an impediment, an assistant, and a Luddite's way of being shadow banned, right? People get upset when you start using or even claiming to be aided by artificial intelligence. How do you feel about AI and its role in creative writing, its role in marketing, its role even in creating covers? Your anthologies have been very beautiful and have helped obviously market the anthologies. How do you feel about this AI business amid all this?
Yeah, I hope I don't get into trouble, but I think it's inevitable. I think the wave of the future is AI is going to permeate every part of our life.
Yeah.
I do a lot with colleges right now, and as you know, it's an ongoing debate in school. Should, what should students be allowed to do with AI, or should they be completely banned, or should certain things be allowed, or just like with writing, like with writers, should some things be allowed? Should it be banned? Should it be allowed? And I leaned toward the future, even though I write my fiction stories are set where their technology doesn't advance. I am also very interested in technology, and I've been a tech nerd most of my life. So I accept the reality. I think the reality is the growth of AI and assisted technology will continue. We see it, we see it in everything nowadays. Our phones, our cars, everywhere, our computers, our browsers. It is permeating everything, and it will continue to do it. I don't think anything will stop it. So I believe we should figure out how we can work with it. We should figure out what it makes sense for authors to do, for artists to do, for creative people to do, and for the people who support them, the people who do the grunt work around this creative work. How can we all work with AI and assistive technologies without losing our soul, without losing our jobs, without losing the economic engine of, if human beings don't get paid, our economy is gone. The robots and AI don't pay taxes, so and they don't build our houses and run our cities. So
I
we
agree
need both.
categorically. If you can't beat it, join it. It's just another evolutionary development or quantum leap in technology. The key difference, though, is exactly what you highlighted toward the end there, which is technology up to this point has been a terrific assistant and helper, and has made our lives easier, more convenient, has taken the drudgery out of work, the backbone labor, and even from an information perspective, it's been a facilitator so that we could do what we do as humans better and more efficiently. We're at the cusp, though, where artificial intelligence and eventually artificial general intelligence will actually swap us out. So an agent can do perhaps most of the things that we can do. So the first time we've been made redundant in a sense, and that's going to continue to increase. So that's its own problem from a societal point of view, a problem that much of science fiction is now coming to grips with and is the topic. And I'm sure many of the short stories, even the anthology, are touching on that for sure. But at the same time, I personally find AI in its current state, as it's continuing to iterate, very, very helpful and useful. I used it for my novel, my hard science fiction, as a super Google. It really helped me research things in a very efficient, deep, comprehensive way. It helped me ideate a little bit on certain concepts. It refreshingly reinforced the notion that I'm not crazy, because it scans all of the journal articles and everything that's been written. It aggregates that information and then it sends it back at me. And when I'm riffing on an idea and then I see it reinforced through the tokens that are in the machines that have been chopped up from the internet, okay, I'm not crazy. And B, what can I do with this idea to take it to its next level? So I found it productive. Did it write my book? Absolutely not. I did it. I did all the writing. I'm sitting there hitting the keys and thinking of the plot. But once I had it together, it had me add a little window dressing to some of the concepts and descriptions. It did some of the heavier lifting with regard to research in a way that was very expeditious and helpful. So I got a lot of value out of my chatty GPT as I'm writing, and I did not consider it violative or in any way encroaching on my creativity. I still felt that it was a supplement to the ideas that I was working on.
Yeah, I think of the model of the printing press. The printing press put scribes, manual scribes, out of business. So it was disruptive for that profession, and there was no need for manual scribes after that to produce books. But otherwise, society adapted to it, and some people think that that helped the advancement, scientific and other types of social and political advancement, was really aided by the printing press.
Absolutely.
So I think that what we face in the future with AI and these assistive technologies is social political problems that need to be addressed. We need to figure out how we can still have full employment, even though AI may be able to take certain jobs that are being done right now by people. How do we continue to have employment? How do we keep people with their paychecks and their health care, even though AI can replace certain individuals, certain individual types of jobs? So I think that it's a social political answer, not necessarily a technological answer.
Absolutely. I think that that's very insightful, which is when we no longer need accountants, maybe not even many doctors, and even the higher level skilled professions are going to be compromised and made redundant. Then we need to figure out what's next and how to shift these roles into ones that are more viable, into a future that's dominated by the machines doing a lot of the work that we took for granted as being innately human. And that's going to be its own kind of challenge.
Hopefully we won't have to come to the world of Dune, where they had a war against the machines and banned all the machines.
Human beings have a tendency of going from one extreme to another, right? So when things are going right, we're like, and then when one little thing goes wrong, it has a cascade effect throughout the whole system, and then we're forced to reevaluate and often take radical knee-jerk reactions to the status quo because we're freaked out by an individual piece of information. That's what dominates the news. In America, we've got shootings every day where you've got thousands of people killed, really, every month. And then we have a mass shooting, and then all eyes are on this. We're kind of, McLuhan was right, the medium is the message still. And the same thing applies to artificial intelligence and a lot of the crises that we face, which is we need to differentiate between what's actually going on statistically and what is hype or what is part of the news cycle, which is creating a reaction to some kind of disruption that we don't even quite fully understand yet. So,
well, like we started the podcast, science fiction can serve a purpose by exploring alternate futures or alternate realities where you can see this is maybe a way something would happen if it followed a certain path. Or here's an alternative. Here's another way something could go under the same conditions. So I think that's a great service that science fiction can serve for humanity.
Absolutely. I think it's been serving it for decades. If we look at the iconic classics of science fiction, they are those things because they do reflect key disruptive moments and areas of stress in our lives. And science fiction acts as a terrific catharsis where it brings it up to the surface. We have that release. And if we have a hint of possible futures and their implications, then maybe we could think twice about making certain decisions which might precipitate those exact nightmare scenarios that science fiction writers have been warning us about for a really long time. I remember seeing the Andromeda Strain as a kid, the Michael Crichton novel adapted to film, and it was so shocking and creepy. and this idea of contamination and kind of alien presence on a different scale than we'd thought of before really, really got me thinking. And there's a host of examples like that where we second guess ourselves. And I think that that's a very valuable function for a genre to do in ways very few other genres can, right? Because by definition, science fiction thinks about what's speculative, what's possible, and it's known for extrapolation based on what we have now. Like the Black Mirror series on Netflix, I think does a wonderful job of this as well, which is taking a small little technological leap and then extrapolating it to its absolute extremes. And then the implications become vivid, where normally we wouldn't have thought it through. And great science fiction writers think it through for us, play it out. And sometimes the outcome is not so nice. And to your exact point, that could be the message we really need to hear individually and as a society. It's good. It's good stuff. And speaking of AI, with your anthology, I didn't use AI for my story was actually written pre-GPT, which I shared with you, and is actually the seed of the science fiction novel that I've been describing. What's your feeling about submissions and policy regarding some of the short stories in the anthology itself?
Yeah, we actually have not addressed it yet. I contribute articles to an online forum called Medium. It's one of these social networks where you can put up your articles and short stories or whatever you want to put up. And they just, within the last few months, implemented a policy where you can use AI in your story or in your illustration that goes along with the story, but you have to declare it. If you don't declare it, and if they can figure out that you used AI, they will ban it. You lose the ability to post it. So that's one policy that exists. There are other platforms that say they ban it altogether. You know, if they detect any AI at all, they delete it. When you self-publish a story to Amazon now, there is a question when you're submitting asking
if it's got AI,
was it AI used? It doesn't prevent you from using it. It just asks the question, which is
reasonable transparency. The question, though, then becomes of degree, because one reason these platforms are cutting back on this and establishing these protocols is because of the prevalence and even tsunami of AI slop. So you've got just folks who are churning out pure garbage with a few prompts for the sake of volume and selling whatever sticks. And on Medium, I'm sure that's a problem too, because again, they have the monetization of these articles based on clicks and likes. And if you could just be spewing garbage, it doesn't really matter as long as you get a little revenue. And I think they're trying to put the kibosh on that, which is reasonable, right? But then if you're using AI as a handy helper, I mean, is it really a piece based on AI? I mean, if you Google something, how different is it from Googling to use AI as a research companion, as a spell checker, as a grammar? I know a lot of authors. I've had authors on this show where they're very transparent about using the AI bots, especially the frontier models, to do grammar checks throughout their whole book too.
Yeah, I've started that. I've started using AI assisted spell check, grammar check. I've started doing that.
What's wrong with that? And then do you have to acknowledge that AI was involved? Well, really? I mean, I don't know. This is another problem, which is what constitutes AI involvement in your creative process, and where's the line where it becomes violative in terms of actually doing the writing for you?
Yeah, I have a similar question of historically, some people have had ghostwriters. So an author's name will be on a book, but they didn't write the book.
Yeah.
Somebody else, sometimes maybe this nameless person in the shadows wrote the book.
Yeah.
And so if you did something with AI, is that similar? Is it your name is on the book, but you didn't create everything in it. Some nameless AI created part of it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not sure about the answer, but I see
That's a
that somewhere.
perfect analogy, and the AI feelings aren't going to be hurt. And, look at Madonna. Did Madonna write all of her songs? Well, I don't think so. Does anyone think twice that anyone else but Madonna actually wrote, sang, performed the songs? Nobody seems to care. No one ever did. So there's a double standard, not only in writing, like when you see a best-selling author at the checkout counter in the supermarket, what's the probability that that guy or gal actually wrote the content of that book? So these are great points, which are all exacerbated by the bots getting smarter and smarter and smarter to the point where will people know? Will people care? And what kind of bugs me sometimes, will anyone be able to tell the difference? Sarah Silverman sued, I think, Anthropic and I think even OpenAI for picking up her jokes. She had joke collections and transcriptions of her stand-up. And now you could go into ChatGPT and say, put together jokes or a routine based on the humor of Sarah Silverman and talk about my Uncle Joe. And out comes the Sarah Silverman style bit of humor. And she sued along with a class action suit of multiple artists, claiming that they were ripped off, that they spent their entire life generating a style and creating content. And these $1 trillion bot companies rip it with no attribution, let alone residual payment. So, wow, crazy times. Crazy times
Yeah,
we
I would
live.
hope that someday, I don't know if it'll ever happen, but I would hope someday that these companies that are worth billions could find a way to pay royalties. That would be from where they take PhD dissertations, they take all the information that's
Everything is
available.
chopped
Yeah.
up into tokens, and then they match associations between words and phrases probabilistically, and they put together these huge matrices, using math. That's like the transformer model, and then they cobble it together dynamically, these pre-trained, you know generative transformer models. It's like, well, where's the money? I mean, where's the content? Human beings made that. It's food for the bots, and they're just taking it all for free. I mean, that's like, we're used to the internet having things for free, but this is taking it, I think, a little too far. Anthropic got sued and they lost, and I think they paid $3,000 for every author whose book they ripped. They literally went into used bookstores and old libraries, and they ripped off the covers and scanned pages and pages of copyrighted material and fed it right into the transformer. So when the authors complain, and if you can identify that your content got ripped, $3,000. But a lot of people complain that that's getting off easy. They're paying off these writers. So I don't know, interesting times. But I'm thankful for guys like you, an indie science fiction author with a big canon of work, putting together and working with others to create this great anthology. And in ways, it's old school and new school. It's old school in that it's short stories, an anthology, good old science fiction. And it's new school in that you're using the publishing mediums that are available and the marketing technologies that's out there to get the word out, make it available, and give folks some press who otherwise might not.
Yeah, I'm so glad we've been successful in doing this for the last few years.
Yeah. And what does the future hold? Expanded anthologies, shifting gears, repurposing content? Will there be a graphic novel of this kind of stuff?
I've wondered about the idea of slightly different topics. Like, we talked about what genres are included in one anthology. What if we split out an anthology that focused on multiverses? What if we split out one that focused on time travel? What if we split out one focused on AI? It seemed like that might be possible, I would think.
Yeah, especially with this era of targeting and media fragmentation. And if AI could really benefit us, I think it'll do a better job at connecting content with users and consumers. Because if it's already chopping everything up and it knows everything, and then it has all this information on the recipient, the target audience, the reader, then a big AI brain can be a great marketing engine where it ties specific nuanced content with readers, consumers most eager for exactly that kind of nuanced content. The bots are perfect for that. And I think we're in a very early stage of this being made manifest, right?
But you're presenting a challenge to me. Next year's anthology, we're going to have to put some words in it about the use of AI.
No doubt, which is, did a bot write this or did you write it? And, and at the same time, though, I think the anthology for 2027 could take advantage of a lot of these tools to hit audiences where it counts, which is like matching up folks. So if you've got short stories in there that have a certain bent or a certain angle, certain target audience, they could hopefully match with the readership to expand your profile even further. That could be possible too. Interesting stuff. So in the podcast description, we'll put in information about the anthology. Is there pre-order set up at this point?
Yes. Pre-order of the Kindle version is available now.
Great. We'll put that link in there, and then additional resources for accessing the Facebook club is still cranking, right? The Facebook page.
Yes.
And then access to your own oeuvre. You've got all your books going back to this alternate reality situation, essay Gibson, and get you going.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for making time. And from a personal note, thanks for including my Johnny Fazuli story. Again, it was the seed for my novel, written during the pandemic. So around the time when the first anthology came out, I penned this in my New York apartment in the middle of the scourge, and it's since evolved into a novel. But it's great. It's a great throwback, and I appreciate you guys liking it, and the edits were on point. And it'd be fun to see me in the anthology with all your other writers and help you promote this great anthology of creative people getting the word out.
Right. Looking forward to it. I so enjoyed our talk today.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And it just shows you how science fiction, despite all of its ups and downs and having to adapt to streaming, and movies might even be going, the big blockbuster movies like Hail Mary might be the last big science fiction movie, especially now that Netflix is buying Warner Brothers, right? The huge spectacle of the big budget science fiction movie going all the way back to Star Wars, it might be seeing its end of days pretty soon, right? Who wants to invest $100 million before anything even happens? When for $100 million, you can create a 20-episode miniseries. So we live in times when our whole definition of science fiction film, science fiction movies, and maybe science fiction itself might be changing out from under us. Let's just hope that it stays true to the heart of people wanting to create a better society for themselves. Because I think at the end of the day,
Absolutely.
That's what science fiction authors are really trying to get at, which is good life for me, but how can we fix what's broken in society and maybe preclude disaster if we don't pay attention.
Exactly.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Great.
Really appreciate your time. Check the links below, folks, for resources. Steve's writing, the anthology, now on pre-order, and the hard copy book will be available on Amazon in February. Is that right?
That's right. February 3rd.
All right. And let's check back. Maybe as we're preparing or you're preparing the next anthology, if there's any new news, and stay on top of exciting things in science fiction. Like, comment, share, everybody. Thanks for listening and watching, and more to come.